All right, we are live. Peace, everybody. This will be our, what is this, the fifth installment or fourth?
I don't know.
Might
be the fourth, might be the fifth, man.
Actually, it's the fifth. I gotta get in there and change the description. We're going over chapter 5, and let me go ahead and get the commercial going. Then we'll dig into it.
Love, man.
Books was in. The books are in. Yep. They in. They're here.
All right, peace. And like I said, today we're going over chapter 5, the two that carried on. I'm Satep and Ra, and I got my brother Kofi on here, my brother Sutek. Y'all want to introduce yourselves?
All right. I want to say ETM Hotep. ETM Hotep just means to come in peace. I want to say Dual Dual Aku, which is thanking the natures of the divine and the ancestors. Majuba Iba E Gungun, Majuba Iba E Gungun, Majuba Iba E Lakba, Majuba Iba E Lakba, Gungun Kiki Gungun. I always want to give honor and praises to the ancestors, because without the ancestors, we wouldn't be here. We are our ancestors, y'all. We literally are our ancestors. Also, I want to extend honor and praises to the true and living ancestors out there according to African traditions and from an African worldview and an African perspective. Again, welcome back to Kofi Paisai TV with Kofi Paisai Research Team. We greatly appreciate y'all for tuning in. We just want to say welcome. Please like and share the show. Peace to those in the chat. Peace to those that may be looking at this in the archive.
Yeah, Shea Lafayette, peace to the family, peace to the brothers on the panel, peace to the chat, and those that will view later in the archive, man. Make sure y'all like and share the show for us, family. That's all we ask. That's how you can support. Also, you can support by going to dopeonlinetees.com. We got a lot of merch there. We got shirts, hats, backpacks, masks, you name it, we got it, and we coming with more. So we also dropped Spiritual Combat Volume 3 this week. So make sure you go and get that, man. We hitting y'all in the head with these works, and we ain't slowing down no time soon. We also got our brother Black Panthers, Killmonger's Corner Volume 2. So we got a lot of work out, man. Make sure y'all support, show some love, man. We black at it again with the destruction of black civilization, Chancellor Williams, chapter 5. So get your books, get your notepad out, and let's get to it.
All right, that's peace. And Kofi, you said you want to get it cracking. You want to get it bracking. What's good?
Yeah, I'll get it bracking. For people that, again, please like and share the show. These I like what we're doing here, man. This is Pretty good, man. Each show that we do, man, when we talk about Chancellor Williams' great destruction of black civilization, man, each show is a good show. Each show is a learning show, man. But for those that got their books and want to follow along, we on chapter 4, the two that carried on. That's on page 136. Now I'll be reading. I'm gonna read 2 pages and then I'm gonna read something from here to try to break it down and give y'all some context. So I'll also be reading from, I'm reading from this historical origin of Christianity, because we're picking up where we left off on at the end of chapter 3 when they talk about Christianity coming into Egypt. So despite some differences that we had with our great brother Walter Williams, I have 2 of his books, and they are some damn good research books, and it took him years to research. We just don't agree with the meta nature has not been deciphered. That's the only discrepancy that I have with the brother before, as the research that he has done over the years of the historical origin of Christianity and the historical origin of Islam, which is volume 2 of great publications. But let's start. I'm gonna read the first 2 pages, and I'll probably jump back and forth and break down some stuff. But it says, from early African viewpoint, there was, and again, we on page 136, chapter 4, the 2 great carry on. From the early African viewpoint, there was nothing earth-shaking or extraordinary about the establishment, still another cult of the Christianity church. The only used things about the new cult and Christianity was that while they disclaim being the Jewish faith, they worship the Jewish tribal God, a God of Israel. Now we're gonna talk about that when I go into Chancellor Williams' work in a minute. Christianity seems to be expanded the role of God, who had been concerned only with the Jews as the chosen people, to a good and universal, the Son God. The Christianity was not really different in even in the central religion belief of the Africans and the Jews of the period in sacrificing sheep, goat, coat, bulls, and sometimes humans for the remission of sin. Now, some Christians will tell you, they talk about African traditions and African, systems, right? But some of the very same things, and what I mean by they talk about the rituals, right? And we know that our people practice a lot of rituals when it deals with African customs and traditions, right? And even in Christianity, they deal with rituals and certain things too. It's crazy that they'll talk about us, but they believed in sacrificing sheep, goat, bulls when you read in the New Testament and so forth on, for the remission of sin, right? For the remission of sin. And this other ritual that I talked about all the time that he mentioned right here, for a while, Christianity had even given up slaughtering their animals for offering. The very cornerstone of their faith was Jesus Christ. And we're going to talk about Jesus Christ because we're talking about the Ptolemies period. So I want to break down and get some context, of where Jesus actually come from. You know what I'm saying? And it started with the Greeks coming into Africa, and it started to after Alexander died. I try not to use the word great because they always describe him as great. And the Ptolemies period took over. This is what sparked this thing of Christianity spreading. It was certain things that he did and certain things that set up this thing for the character that they call in Jesus Christ, right? So it says, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, was sacrificed for the sins of man, which we all come from the church. So we know it said Jesus died for our sins. He was the sacrificial lamb. So there was no more of sacrificing these sheep and goats and these bulls and etc. because Jesus was the lamb. He was y'all know the story. Y'all know the story, but this is one of the rituals that came behind it. Drinking of blood wine and eating the body bread of the fundamental aspects of man of most ancient religion. So, you see that, we grew up in the churches and we know certain times they would come around and they would pass out the trays of wine that was symbolic, this grape juice or whatever was symbolic of the blood of Jesus. and a piece of cracker that they would pass around. This was a ritual that they would do in the church, that you would see that we would do in the church, where we would drink the blood of Jesus and we would eat a piece. The cracker or piece of bread was a representation of his body. So we was actually eating Jesus. This was the ritual, which is a ritual that still goes on in the church, of drinking the blood of Jesus and eating the body of Jesus. But they would demonize you for those that practice their African tradition, held strong to their African roots. They would demonize you for the certain rituals that you do, but they are actually doing some of the same things that some of our ancestors did in their practices. But the spread of Christianity in the land below the first cataract gained momentum after the destruction of Ethiopia and the empire in the world famous capital in the city of Maroon. Such a decline of the fallen nation, empires, and civilization is never a short, sudden, dated, for even the suggested in the case of 350 AD. Many factors force operating over a long period of time before what can be called the great age of Black civilization came to a close. And we know that came to a close after the 25th dynasty. After the 25th dynasty, there was no more of the Remich, the Kemetu, or the Africans fighting back for their land. We talked about that. We're going to talk about it a little bit more. How the Black world was being adversely affected by both Asians and Europe may be better understood by a flashback or even following the end of the Black rule over Egypt with the close of the 25th dynasty in 656 BC. The victory Assyrians, you may recall that Necho, the king of Sias in Lower Egypt, the governor general supported by the Assyrian Greshams. This Necho was an agent, but by this time the practice of calling the non-African resident Egyptian had been so firmly established that it had a weight on customary laws. The Afro-Asian had failed to win recognition as the only Egyptians. Whites of all nationalities through a minority were often the denominated group, which they was after the 25th dynasty, ruling for their power based in Lower Egypt, hence the continued crisis between the white Egyptians and now more populous colored Egyptians. The Black Egyptians no longer counted as a power group north of the First Cataract. When the Assyrians were finally expelled during the 26th dynasty, 664 through 523 BCE, the foundation permanent of white Asian rule, the Egyptian had the firm land. From this period on, the wars and the control of the Egyptian primary wars that took place was whites against white. So after the 25th dynasty, that like we said earlier in the previous chapter, chapter 3 and in chapter 2, you constantly seen that when the government broke down, and feuds took out between each other and the government broke down, the chaos took off. That's when these whites or these agents would swarm in and they would take over partially of the Egyptian land. You always see constantly from the first intermediate period back to the middle period where the Africans are now reuniting Egypt again. So they was always in the struggle against these foreigners, against these Asians, against these whites. But after the 25th dynasty, you no longer seen the African fighting back. The wars that began to take place in Africa, in Egypt, was white against white. The internal cooperation, jockeys, and position compound by the various portion groups reflected that the weakness of the countries in the employing more foreigner mercenary troops, especially Greeks. These large incursions of Greeks and their allies formed the same kind of advance based on the future Greeks, Hybernus, and their previous Asiatic people. The time was not yet, but it was opportunity time for the Persians to invade this much invaded land and began to rule in 525 BCE. That was the last 21 years. Since the administration conquered by the absence of the king and general weakness of the opening revolts, very long Persians, Egyptians died through extraordinary lines, strong kingships and imperial administration. Cabius, Darius, I'm not going to call him the Great, and Darius II. The end of the Persian rule was in 404. The Egyptian Greeks joined the Egyptian nationalists in the War of Liberation. The victory was short-lived. So the Persians took over. He's saying that the Persians took over. The Persians took over in 525 BCE. They began to take over. So now the Persians take over at that particular time. And then they was beat out, and they formed a union with the Egyptians, and then they took back over Egypt until 332. The Egyptians were powered by 5 years before the rebellion of independence was broken, and the Persian rule reestablished for another 64 years. In 32 BC, Alexander the Greek arrived, and having broken, I'm finna stop here in a minute, broken the imperial power of Persians elsewhere, had no trouble taking over Egypt. A Greek ruled Egypt for almost 300 years before the expansion of the Roman Empire into the end of their domination of 30 BCE. There was a flashback point to departure, but before returning to the Ethiopian church and the significance of what have reviewed as a flashback should again be emphasized as a great issue. For we've been reviewing that the last phrases of the Caucasianization in Egypt that were throughout both Black and their history were erased from their memory. So we're going to talk about, when I talk about how all of this stuff that the Egyptians did, and far as their tradition goes, how was it erased from them? Something happened. Something took place, and something took place around the Greeks when the Greeks came in at 332 BCE. And this is when you start to see what they call in a Jewish influence, as he say, or you start to see the spread of Christianity, and you start to see how over the years the minds of the people that was there, their culture or their traditions or the practices began to be erased, as he says here. And the Jewish ruled for 500 years, and the serious interludes, the Persians 185 years, the Greek 274 years, and the Romans 700 years, the Arabs, which is still there, 1,327 years, the long struggle that taking place wherever they had human work. They had all over the wealth, their bodies, their souls, and their minds was the process of the steady dispersonalization and dehumanization. So I'm gonna stop right there real quick, and I'm gonna jump into this book because now we're talking about Christianity. He's talking about Christianity, and he's talking about how the Greeks came into Africa, right? And the Greeks, and over time, the Greeks ruled for 300 years, right? The Greeks ruled over there for 300 years. And over time, they began, the Africans began to lose their memory on their culture and their practices because certain things that took place, and this Hellenistic phase and Christianity being pushed. So we know that everybody know about Alexander the Greek, and Alexander the Greek came in. After Alexander the Greek died, you had the other men, his generals began to rule what they call the Ptolemies era. And you had the first Ptolemies, his name was Zotar. Zotar means savior. So let's get into it real quick, and then I'm gonna stop, and I'll let the brothers go on to where they at. But I want to, talk real quick on how this thing actually transpired. And let's go back to, we were talking about Alexander the Greek. It started with the invasion of Alexander the Greek in Egypt in 332 BCE, at which he had removed the existence of the pharaohs and put himself into place. At the same time, he demanded the ancient Egyptian priest society to relate to him as a god, and he gave him a priest status and accept him into the sacred institutions, which would have given him legitimacy. We know that wasn't going to happen. We talked about the priests and what the roles of the priests were, and how the priests established power in the second chapter or the third chapter, Sitep and Ra? I think it was the second chapter.
I believe it was actually the third one.
Okay, the third chapter. So we know that go ahead.
No, I was gonna say where the priests, they established that, and they was getting too much to be too much. Yeah, I believe that might have been the third one. It's packed with a lot of information in here.
Yeah, right. So the priest wasn't having that. It says his demands was rejected, like I said, because you know, if you go back and you were following us when we read the other one, you will know how the priests kicked up and how they came, you know, how they positioned themselves and they came into power, and they came into power for a particular reason, specifically when Akhenaten took over during the new dynasty. Okay, it says he demanded was rejected because the ancient Egyptians did not worship his human form. They paid homage to their ancestors in nature. They were also in tune with universal spiritual consciousness and direct spiritual links with the Creator. Alexander later, the Ptolemies and Romans knew that in order to rule Egypt and its people, they had to be accepted and made part of the ancient Egyptian sacred societies. However, the ancient Egyptians considered Alexander a spiritual, out of tune, uncivilized European, alienated, and therefore his efforts was rejected. Also, there was no evidence that suggested that ancient Egyptians accepted persons of other races or cultures into the sacred priest societies, and thus Alexander demands that he received him as a god was the world's first form of European racial supremacy. At the time of Alexander the death in 323 BCE, Ptolemy's Lagai, who became Zotar. Zotar, again, like I said, means savior. You can look it up for yourself. Zotar means savior. The title of Ptolemy's the first Lagai, in which, you know, savior is a title. I tell people that all the time. They think it's a person. When we talk about Jesus Christ, it's a title. Savior is a title. He got that title. The word savior played a significant role in the evolution of creating the image of Jesus Christ, the man-made non-spiritual religion called Christianity. Ptolemy's the first Zotar, like Alexander also tried, and I'm not going to read all of it. He tried the same thing, and he was rejected. Ptolemy Zotar sought out to find counsel with the ancient priests and priests of Memphis, Egypt. So now we talked about racism. Now when you get to the Ptolemy's Lagai, who became Ptolemy Zotar the first, you start to see we witness racism. We witness integration. You know, we talked about those two. Now we're talking about sellouts. I would say sellouts. When you start to study the historical accounts and you start to see certain things, you start to see that when Ptolemies went into Het-Ka-Ptah, what they call Memphis, he sought out the priest there because the priest rejected him, rejected Alexander the Greek, and they rejected Ptolemies getting into their priesthood because they wanted to be in the ancient Egyptian priesthood, which we know that the priest was not going for that. So these particular priests in Het-Ka-Ptah end up making Zotar an image. He made him an image. And you know, when you study the cosmology and stuff in Het-Ka-Ptah, what they call it Memphis, you will know you will hear about Apis the bull, right? So and we know Wusar Osir in the Greek is called Osiris. So they took and they merged Osiris and Serapis. I mean, not Serapis, but the Apis bull, and got Osirapis. Later on, they got Serapis. A lot of y'all already know about this. And over this statue, over time, you know, it later created the devotion to the Serapis, who was spoken of as the savior. But this led to, but I'm not going to read all of it. This led to the process when you start getting to the Council of Nicaea, the Council of Ephesus, the Council of Nicaea, the second, the Council of Lyons, and etc. You start to see these Greeks start to put on these councils, and then you start to see in the same period as Zotar, when he began to shut down all of the temples in Egypt. He got so frustrated and upset because after the priest in Het-Ka-Ptah made him an image, to be worshipped, which they call Serapis. He still wasn't accepted when he tried to, you know, claim his divineness, or, you know what I'm saying, or be worshipped as a god and put him in these temples. And what's the name? These priests wasn't going for it. So he created a law and he began to shut down all of these temples in ancient Egypt. and therefore they had to practice inside of their home. And I think this took place always. These laws was in effect all the way up to all the way up until the Romans came in 60 BCE. So I think it talks about. I think further we read it talks where he talks about they began to use their what do you say? Hold on, what Chancellor Wisdom say? What do you say? They began. I can't remember where it was, but they began to. The Egyptians that were throughout both blacks and their history was erased from memory. So you start to see that a lot of things that they believed in, that they practiced, will be becoming less and less because of Ptolemy's Zotar begins to shut down all of their sacred temples. He began to shut the temples down because he wanted to be deemed or worshipped as a god, as Alexander the Greek sought out the priest to be, but he was rejected as well. So I'll stop right there, but I just wanted to kind of paint a little more context of what Chancellor William was talking about and how the spread of Christianity begins to take place during the Greeks when the Greeks came in 332, and it's because they're going to continue to talk about the Ptolemies and who these generals was of Alexander the Greek. And we always hear about Ptolemies, but there was different Ptolemies. Ptolemies the first was Zotar, I think. Ptolemies Ephrate or whatever his name was the second, but you had so many that went on. But I'll stop right there, man, and I'll come back a little bit later.
Now, where did you stop at, Kofi?
I stopped on page 1. I stopped on 128, I think that was, because it was on one page. I don't flip through. Hold on, let me go back. I'll tell you. I didn't flip through. I stopped on page 120. Hold on, where the chapter start at, man? Hold on.
I was about to say you should be in the 30s.
Yeah, I am in the 30s. I'm still in chapter 2, man. I stopped on the page. Okay, I stopped on page 138. 138. I stopped in the middle of 138. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's perfect because I go because like you said, you segued me right into that Christianity and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna start what I got on 139 at the very last paragraph. It says the churches seem to be firmly rooted in Alawa and Markoro. Churches seem to be everywhere. There were several in every large town, one in just about every small village, some in rural areas away from villages, and churches scattered over large urban centers, along with those greater splendors in the cathedral city, the seats of bishops. White administration and control of African Christianity was assured by establishing the head of the church in the Lower Egypt, the Patriarch of Alexandria, with power to appoint all bishops in Africa. So the only way you could be a bishop is if a motherfucker that ain't even from Africa appoint you to be it. The bishops appointed were always white or near white until token appoints of blacks to lesser posts such as deacons had to be made following protests by black church leaders, support by their kings, and while the red men of Nabade caught in the middle tend to identify with the blacks of Makarua and Alawa, the split between the Western and Eastern Church over doctrine was reflected in the Ethiopian kingdoms. This meant that the religious strife tend to alienate monophysite Nabade of Orthodox Makaru. This competition for ascendancy may have had a great deal to do with expansion of the churches in Egypt and the former Ethiopian Empire in the south. So what I got out of that was, the church moved in. The church moved in, and they stated it's one in every city, and and even with the you find the racial injustice within the church, because it says to be appointed, you had to be white or of white descent. So you couldn't even be a black bishop in an African cathedral style type church, Christianity church. Like, that's just crazy to me. But they just go to show you colonialism. Your mic muted, Kofi.
Yeah, I was just saying, my bad. I was saying right, because you see, that's why I wanted to try to paint it, give it a little bit more context, because you see right there, what happened was, man, Zotar, man, they wouldn't accept him, wouldn't accept him into the priesthood. So shoot, they said so he created a law. I tell you what, I'll create a law and I'll shut down all of these temples where you can't go in these temples and practice your thing, since you won't let us be amongst you, and we'll create our own. And that's what they did, because when you start, like I said, when you start to get, when you start to get into Zotar and you start to get into Serapis, the character of Serapis and the laws that start to take place, and then you start to see them politicking more to create what, these churches, or create these, to create their belief system, what they call in Christianity, or how Christianity came into place. You started to see the Council of Nicaea. They started to meet and they started to talk about certain things that they was going to implement. Even the even the status of what Serapis was, with Serapis involved into what we call in Jesus Christ. And you go from the Council of Nicaea, then you go to the Council of Constantinople, where they meet in Constantinople, Turkey. The Council of Ephesus, the same thing. They coming back in, and it's amongst them. They are talking and gathering about what they're going to do and what they're going to establish and stuff. So it became more about them, and not about the Africans. So they created their own institutions, because the Egyptians wouldn't let them into their own. So he banned everything. Made what they're practicing was evil, demonized them. You couldn't practice these things. So you started to see them go inside to practice these things after he sanctioned a law to ban them out of these temples, and practice their own thing. So now their tradition became exclusive. It was specifically for them. Y'all won't let us in on yours. We're going to create our own, and y'all can't be in ours. And we're going to create laws where y'all can't even practice, y'all own tradition. So they had to go inside and underground to do that.
Yeah, man. I just wanted to shed some light on that. I ain't got nothing for the next couple. It's about 1:44, so I don't know. You got anything, Sutek? Sean, I see you on here. Sean, what's up?
Yeah, man, I got something for what page is this? Let y'all rock out on Christianity. I ain't touching that. We go to 138 at the last paragraph. It's almost like in the middle of that last paragraph. He reiterating why Lower Kemet was such a prize, such a treasure to the world, why everybody wanted it. It says the great wealth producing trade with Ethiopia was promoted, and what appeared to be a general detente prevailed. Indeed, whoever held the sea coast, whether Asian, European, or Egyptian, controlled world trade and put Ethiopia in a state of economic dependence, no matter how vast the flow of goods from the south. Egypt was the middleman with the greater control over both volume and prices. Both the Greek and Roman rulers of Egypt left Ethiopia to play its own role. And we have seen what that role was during 1,000 years of unbroken progress directed from Meroe. So basically, whoever controlled that area by the sea, those sea coasts and those seaports, was the middleman, and they basically controlled the flow of the trade. You know what I'm saying? This is why Lower Kemet was so prized, was so valued. You know what I'm saying? So this is why people wanted to be in Lower Kemet so bad. These invaders, these foreign entities wanted to be in Kemet so bad, in Lower Kemet to be specific.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's all I want to do. That's all I got on that for a couple of pages.
Yeah,
Me-
that's a good point, man. That's a good point.
Yeah, because we hadn't even touched on that. You know, we talked about the last 2 chapters. We talked about the conflict, the breaking down of the government, and every time they ruled, they came into Lower Egypt. You know, they didn't conquer the entire Egypt region. There was just one specific part that they would always go into. We never did talk about that. So yeah, that was good. Mikhail, we on chapter 4, not 6.
No, we on 5.
I mean 5. I mean
Man,
she
y'all
on
both hold up.
yeah she in
Leave them
she in
brownies alone, Kofi.
yeah she in 6. I ain't had none.
I told her earlier we in chapter 5.
Yeah. You got something, Sean?
Nah.
All right.
Yeah, I ain't got nothing for the next couple pages.
Well, yeah, I don't know where you want to start at, but I'll just start here because I want to, kind of continue to kind of talk about what happened, you know what I'm saying, during these different invasions, because we talking about Christianity and we talking about these foreigners that came in after the 26th dynasty, and after that there was no more rule of the African. But I'll start on page 152, the decisive battle of history. Egypt, on the other hand, was undergoing one of her periodic conversions from an invasion, and most faithful one of which we already referred as the Muslim invasion in 639 42 AD. This conquest was usually the case and had been made easier by still a previous Persian invasion in 619 through 629 AD. Some sources suggest that the new wave of Persian invasions began in 619 AD, determined the course of the battle, and conquering Nobada and reestablishing their frontier at the great system of fortification at the First Cataract. From there, blacks had been raiding various areas in Egypt and attacking garrison throughout the 10 years of the last Persian occupation. In this and other similar instances, the pictures that emerged clearly is that the blacks, even after being pushed out of Egypt, were more upset by foreign invasions and resisted them more courageously than the new Egyptians, who by comparison appeared to be an easier conquest and rather cowardly. Hold on, let me read that part again. In this and other similar incidents, the picture of emerged clearly is that the blacks, after even being pushed out of Egypt, were more upset by foreign invasions and resisted them more courageously than the new Egyptians, who comparison appeared to be easily conquered and rather cowardly. Otherwise, how could Amir ibn al-As, the Muslim general, conquer all Egypt so easily with only 4,000 men? The conqueror Arabs generally apparently knew the difference between fighting qualities of the blacks in the south and those of the Egyptians and their mercenary troops. Despite the continuous raid by the blacks, he chose not to extend his operation into their land. But no dispose of Abdullah, the new Arab governor general Viceroy of Egypt. The year followed the complete takeover by the Muslims of 643 AD. He decided to bring at once. He knew how that it will be a war, not like an easy conquest in Egypt with the armies of only 4,000 men. With a large and better equipped army, the Arab expedition invaded the Black Country with the confidence that was, and at that time it wasn't a Black country. Shoot, I mean, at that time it was white rule. Black, well, it was a Black country at one point in time, though, but Black country was the confidence that was heightened by what appeared to be hastily in a confused retreat for frightened warriors. The Ethiopian strategy pretended to fright and wild retreat was so well known in Egypt that it is difficult to understand how it could have been unknown to Abdullah and his generals, or had this to, like everything else that was African, to be blotted memory. If also more, once they were going to pay dearly for ignorance of African inventions. So here is just talking about the Arab and the Arabs coming in, and what's the name, taking over the rule with 4,000 men. I ain't understand though. Reading this, we talking about the Egyptians. After the Egyptians was pushed out of reign, they, like I said, they stopped, they kind of stopped, fighting, back for the land. And after the 26th dynasty, you start to see white wars, white on white, white fighting against the whites, invader against invader and fighting. And it's crazy that the Egyptians were sitting back, of the people that occupied this land at one time, all this time sat back and looked at the things that were transpiring from the Greeks coming in, things that were transpiring were actually for the Greeks, the Persians, and then from after the Persians losing, then the Persians regaining, and then the Greeks coming in, and the Greeks ruled for 300 and some years, and then you had the Romans that came in. I think they ruled for like I can't remember exactly how many years they ruled. They might have ruled for like 700. I don't know. Where is them? Try to find out where they ruled for 274 years. They ruled for 274 years. Then you had the Arab that came in and ruled for that, I think 13, which they still in rule today. But at that particular time, Chancellor Williams said that they had ruled at that particular time 1,327 years, the Arab. Like, and I say the Arabs are still in Africa, today. But the Egyptians, I just didn't understand how the Egyptians are the people that occupied that land at that particular, occupied that land for all those years, sat back and watched what was going on, and then was mad at the last invaders for getting kicked out and the Arabs coming in. That was kind of crazy. That was kind of crazy to me. I'll read a little bit more, and I'll stop. But not to dispose was Abdullah, the new Arab government general advisor, that following the complete takeover by the Muslims in 643 AD, he's decided to bring the whole heartland of the blacks under the Muslim control at once. He knew, however, it would be really a war, and like it was easy conquest of Egypt with an army of only 4,000 men. With a large and better equipped army, the Arab expedition invaded the black country with a confidence that heightened by what appeared to be hasty and confused retreat of frightened warriors. The Ethiopian strategies between, I think I read this already, I think frightened, wild retreated was so well-known Egyptians that the difficulty to understand it could be unknown to Abdullah and the general, or he had to, like everything else that was African, be blotted from memory. If so, for once they were going to play dearly in ignorance to African inventions. They were allowed to advance deeply into black territory before 100,000 retreated, and frightened blacks turned to frontal and flaking onslaughts that also completely wiped out the entire Arab armies. And army historians of period felt compelled to admit, hey man, somebody take over. I gotta stop real quick. I'm gonna jump back in a minute. Let me get us situated. It's time for me to do that. I'll be right back.
All right. Did you have anything, Sutek or Sean?
What Kofi stop at again?
I don't know what Kofi was going in on about, man.
So y'all ain't had nothing on the Battle of Dongola?
Go ahead.
Let's see.
What page you on?
Hold on, let me see.
I think you might be a little bit further down past me, Sutek, because I'm on 144.
That's 140. I already did that. Yeah, I'm on 144. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
on 142. Go ahead. I'll go.
You at the bottom, I'm at the top.
No, I'm at the top too.
You at the top too. Well,
You
go ahead
might
then.
say
Go
the
ahead.
same thing.
Go ahead then. I want to hear what I want you to build on it. Go ahead.
Hold on, let me see what I got. Oh yeah. I was just talking about showing where they mentioned the pupil smiters, the famous pupil smiters, and at the beginning of 144, it says the leader led from the front, not from some hill miles away from the fighting. This intermediate presence of their leader in the midst of danger with them may have had much to do with the courage and expertise of the African soldiers, the units that amazed the ancient world, that memorable day between the first and second cataracts were the bow and arrow corps. They were so skillfully trained that they could aim their arrows at the eyes of their enemies and shoot with unbelievable accuracy. So these is the. I mean, if you're familiar with Kemet and you hear people talking about, or in Nubia, you hear people talking about the pupil smiters, the people that will shoot arrows and knock people eyes out their sockets. Yo, these are those guys, and that's crazy that they were able to do that. I'm curious about the distance in between this archery, to kind of put together how precise they actually were. But yeah, I was just mentioning the pupil smiters. I used to hear people talk about them all the time, but now I'm seeing it in the literature. So there you go.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. And then what I wanted to highlight was the part about being a leader.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part. That's the part. What I liked about this was it says those. Yeah, it says those were the days when the king meant leader. The leader led from the front and not from some hill miles away from the fighting. You know what I'm saying? Like that. That's powerful there, because a lot of the times when we go to war now in modern times, you see that guy, he pressing the buttons on the hill. He's not in the fight anymore. You know what I'm saying? He's sending the troops out. So yeah. But yeah, that's all. So we was right in line with that, Sutek. Let me slide over to 145. All right. So I believe in this paragraph. It show how we like.
145. There was in a battle on the top of 145. It says the spirit.
Did you freeze up, Sutek?
Playing strategies for a no surrender war. As the fighting continued with increased fury on both sides, it became clear to the Arab generals that victories over the blacks could never be won over the battlefield. So they know they wasn't finna beat them in no battle. These boys wasn't playing, man. These is warriors. Again, their previous defeats by the blacks were still playing a determining role in the Arab-African relations. Now I say, instead of a no surrender, instead of making, because they went on to make a treaty. Instead of making a treaty, they should have kept at them, because they see that these Arabs see they can't beat them on the battlefield. So the blacks should have kept at them instead of forming a treaty and eventually being manipulated into sending slaves. Like, they should have kept going. Why stop? Why form a treaty when you got the Arabs on their heels? Like, that just didn't make sense to me. But yeah, that's all I had. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, I'm gonna go down to the last paragraph. I want to talk about, like I said, see if we lacking or not as a people. Let's see. In a previous discussion, I wondered out loud whether the black race is lacking in one quality that seems to distinguish Caucasians and explain the reason for their long domination of the earth. Their deep concern about their prosperity, the future role and welfare of their white offspring, and their furthest generations. Like their plans and policies for today's world are often based on expectation outcomes centuries hence. The black race is a race on the other hand have been so split up and preoccupied with current problems that they seem to have lost the deep concern about the future of their descendants. Like I think this little thing right here sums up where we are still as a people. Like so the European man, like I was saying on one of the other shows, like they play for the long game. Like we so focused on right now that we don't, think about the future and leaving stuff, for our descendants and stuff like that. How y'all feel about that?
Yeah, you hit it. You hit it on the head. We right in line with that too, because I had that highlighted too. I feel you hit it right on the head, bro. You said exactly how I felt. They like you said, they in it for the long haul, and we got to start thinking with that same mentality too. Even if we don't see the benefits of our actions in our lifetime, we need to think about our future generations. You know what I'm saying? Because this change that we pressing for, it ain't gonna come in our lifetime. So we just gotta accept that.
Right. And that's how the Europeans stay ahead of us is because we want it now. We ain't on all patience is out the window, man. Island time, nobody's on island time anymore. Everybody wants it now. So and that just goes back to the economic thing when you're talking about the black dollar and how fast it circulates. As soon as you get it, you spend it, And I be doing it too. I get some money and oh man, I'm about to go get this and that. Like, so it's conditioning that we facing right now. We got to be able to break that, and it ain't easy. So, it is what it is. But we definitely got to be able to break that conditioning that we've been setting forth. But yeah, anybody got anything else? Oh, Sean, you all right, man?
Yeah. Nah, I was letting y'all go. I thought y'all ain't going no further than that. Y'all stopping right there. Y'all gonna skip on the.
What part on 45?
Yeah, I was letting y'all get y'all 45 out, man. 45 and 46.
Go ahead.
Nah, I was gonna go to 47, but I ain't.
Let me highlight 46. The only thing I want to highlight on 46 is the footnote, and he's talking about the slave because he gives you the context at the top of the paragraph or the top of the page. But the footnote at the bottom says a slave was a captured prisoner of war, and in early history, the term was no more degrading than that of a prisoner of war today. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if you say, and we all know, everybody know John McCain. He was a famous European prisoner of war. That's just somebody that I could just say because he ran for president, whatever. But like, if you was to call, like, Trump called him a POW, but it was the he called him a POW, but it wasn't degrading until he said the slick shit like, yeah, he got caught. You know what I'm saying? So, but like, if you call somebody a slave today, that's not the same as calling them a POW. You call somebody a slave, like if Trump would have called McCain a slave, that would have been different. So the word doesn't equate as it did back in the day, and that's what the author is trying to state in this footnote right here. That was just basically saying, like, it was an indentured slave they was talking about up here. But yeah, you go on to 147, Sean.
146, real quick. I just want to say and I was talking about that treaty that they made, and the Africans should have kept going. Let's touch on a treaty and how they got finessed into sending slaves. At the very top of 146, it says the terms call for an annual delivery of 360 slaves near the frontier and 40 extra slaves. That's 400 slaves in total as a gift to the Egyptian viceroy in order to induce the Ethiopians to accept what at first appeared to be a tribute. In fact, the Arab leaders presented it as a treaty of trade and commerce, agreeing to pay in exchange wheat and barley and wine at value in excess of the gifts by the Africans. So this is why I say they should have kept fighting, because they had the Arabs on their heels, and they ended up making a treaty and got finessed into sending 400 slaves per year to the Arab Egyptian viceroy. So that's why I said they should have kept going, man. But that's it. Y'all can go on 147.
All right. So let's get straight to the point, through all of that. Yeah, also the Bacchus mentioned. When you was mentioning the tree, they actually did something on the Masawari clan channel regarding the Bach. But I wanted to get on the 147, the second paragraph.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah, just hit it straight on the nose. You know what I mean? It was just a body bag. It said the record of 5,000 years that ended with the European conquest of the whole continent in the 19th century shows that every African state remained relatively secure and independent as long as it maintained a strict policy of excluding foreigners from settling within its borders. That same record makes clear that wherever this policy was abandoned and whites were admitted under the pretext whatsoever, the eventual doom of the state was certain. The single point that is being made here is that the king Calidosos and the other black leaders already had, as early as 652 AD, 37 centuries of his record before them when they allowed the Arabs to establish a permanent base of operations in their land. They ignored the record, as other black leaders were to continue to do until Muslim Asia and Christian Europe swept the continent and left the whole black world prostrate at their feet. In this particular paragraph, he basically just, took the roof off the drop top and says, look, enough of the games. This is what happened. Clear cut. We learned nothing from the Arab inception or the coming of the Arab. We learned nothing, because had we learned something, we would have learned that the Arab brought with them certain things to get them to do certain things to us. What did they bring that was so significant? They came a little bit more in peace. Coming in peace. Then I'm gonna bring you this language that I learned from the Christians and the Jews, and this God Allah. I'm gonna give you that, but we got to be able to do business. So in order for us to do business, we got to have a relationship where we can communicate with one another. Because I don't know who you are really, and you don't know who I am really, but I do got this sword. And if I will use this sword, then I will conquer you. This is the cockiness of the Arab. They're going to romanticize their belief to a point that you'll fall in love with it as well, because it comes off so eloquently to you. And then if you don't convert or accept it, then you're gonna die by the sword. So we learn nothing from that. We learn nothing from the coming of Islam into West Africa or the continent of Africa as a whole. So when we seen, things falling, this is why it goes back to, the fall of Kemet was the fall of the continent, pretty much to say, because whatever happened there could happen anywhere, right? Because they were more technically advanced than the rest of the world at that period of point in time, but so much was going on consistently there. However, when they come the way they came, they left us the same way. The Christians left us the same way the Arabs left us, just in shackles, in ignorance. Because the Arab don't get a golden age without the inception of conquering not only Kemet, but trade routes. and these African rulers and leaders lost the routes. They chased the wealth and not control of the routes to maintain their sovereignty for their people. So, you know, this is a clear-cut indicator, man, that he was spot on right here. And it talks about thousands of years of rule and how things transpired. So,
yeah, man, I like that. I don't even need to put nothing on that. You did what I was gonna do with it, so that's what's up. Let's see. 148. I got some at the bottom of 148. What they talking about agriculture a little bit. Y'all know I've been dealing with that. It says, it was during this period that the extensive body of church literature developed in African language and the remarkable pottery industries were expanded. Painting, like writing, such stimulated by the church, just has been the case in temple art. Mining was a principal source of wealth, but agriculture was the basic national activity, and there is evidence of the people's battle with the encroaching deserts. What he's talking about is these deserts. He's about to get in what we was talking about on the last chapter when we was talking about the aqueducts and stuff like that being built. Let's see. They followed the system of the Mother Empire and overcame certain areas by developing a system of terraces farming that was irrigated by water wheels constructed for high places. This was successful enough to produce a surplus of agriculture commodities for exporting trade. Cotton had been produced from ancient times, and cloth made and other weaving arts were among the oldest crafts. That glass was made was certain, but the extent of the enterprise is not indicated by the archaeology finds. So, like, you know, by them being able to divert that water, you know, develop the land, create agriculture, which led to economy. You know what I'm saying? And then the economy led to the export. If you're not exporting anything, your economy, your what do they call it, the GDP, your GDP is for your country is gonna be low, which means your country is poor, basically. Like if you ain't shipping nothing out, it's basically a poor country. You know, if you just bring it in, that means you just spending a lot of money. You know, we all know how it is. You got to make money. You got to be making money to spend money. So you ain't exporting a lot of stuff. You know, it's gonna be hard for you out here. What's up, Kofi? I see you back.
Yeah, I'm back. Wait, what page y'all on?
I just read the 140. We at top of 149 now.
Okay.
Anybody got anything?
I ain't got nothing for 149. I got something for 150 though.
I got something for 149 real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Basically, I think this is important, not only just for some research that I already have been doing, but just for people to fully understand what it's saying in that first paragraph at the top. It says the reports of Arab scholars on the cities of the blacks during these early centuries are significant for two important reasons. He says the first reason is that, like the European explorers or quote unquote geographers and others referred to earlier, they were not concerned with writing African history, and nothing could have been farther from their intentions than glorifying the achievements of blacks. That's key. But their mission was to make factual reports on the conditions and exploitable possibilities of Africa to their home countries. Such as reports would be the basis for future penetration, exploitation, and conquest. The significance of that paragraph goes to the fact of when they are coming into the continent, what are they coming in the continent to do? What are they seeking? Something, they have to be exposed to something to want to go further into a place to know more about it. The resources, the number one thing that the Arab and the European wanted was resources. What did they need resources for? To sustain their way of life. Things that had ultimate value for them that they didn't have. So you talk about, if you go and you look at all the African resources, there's a map with all the African resources. Now, take that same search and go to Europe and look at European resources or natural resources, or go to Saudi Arabia or the Middle East and look at what natural resources exist in that area. What you're going to see is not an abundance of resources that are on the continent of Africa. And they needed that to sustain it. So in order to write history the way they wanted to write it, not only are they going to write it in a way that it looks good for them and their people, but also bad on the African to show that, look, we need to go and see what we can do to help these people. They ain't wearing clothes. Their teeth look sharp. They look cannibalistic. You know what I'm saying? They can't read. They can't write. You know what I mean? Some of them look like they hadn't had a bath. Some of their hair is dyed like the mud. Some they wear like finicky looking shirts, or the kids look malnutrition. They got big bellies. You know what I mean? They don't wear shoes. All of these things was things that they needed in order to get further clearance to go. Yes, let's go and let's see if we can rescue these people. This is the mindset of the missionary. This is the infiltration that was used to propagate by using the missionaries. Let's go and let's get these people some help. Let's educate these people. Let's feed these people. Let's show them how to clothe and all these things. Things that was already, people was already doing. But they played the game that way based on the way that they saw us. From the Arabs, if you get from Spears to Pent, Volume 2, it's a clear distinction in chapters, the last two chapters of that text written by me and Sutek, or I should say Sutek and myself, that there was some type of racism toward blacks. That's the earliest inception of racism toward us. The Europeans just inherited and flipped it and did it a little bit better than the Arab, because to them it was a business move for them to get into the interior, but they had to have a plot. So they wrote themselves out a plot. And this is why that first paragraph right there is important.
Okay. What you got, Kofi? Your mic muted.
Mic muted.
Yeah, I was gonna say I really ain't got too much further than what I had on them first couple of pages, but I mean we can go to page. I got we can go
I really
page,
don't either.
53.
That's crazy. I got the read. I was looking through it. I'm like, because some of this stuff, he goes over it. He goes over it again. You're able to link it to the chapter before.
Yeah.
Yeah. For 150 real quick before y'all go to 153. At the end of the first paragraph on the Arab hordes, end of that paragraph, that first paragraph, it says, "Let the record show, therefore, that all the Arabs that swarmed into Africa across the Red Sea in the Indian Ocean were not bent on either conquest or domination. Countless thousands were fleeing there for refuge, fleeing for their lives. Once settled there, however, they formed an ever-increasing population base for the Muslim leaders whose aim was to establish Islamic rule over the whole black world." And right there you see that resulted in heavy Islamic influence around that Horn of Africa region, because they coming across from Saudi Arabia and from Yemen to Sudan, modern Sudan and Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia. You got the tip of Yemen is right next to Djibouti. You know what I'm saying? So you can go right across from the Arab Peninsula to the African plate very extremely easily. So that resulted in a lot of heavy Islamic influence, and also you know if you look at some of those people and some of them look different, it resulted in a lot of admixture as well. And I'm gonna go on to the paragraph right up under that. They were to follow the Christian strategy of concentrating on the conversion of African kings and leaders and the belief that as the king goes, so the nation goes. You know what I'm saying? So this is the same process that we see in West Africa. A theory that did not work in Africa except in a superficial way for expediency. However, the black kings were already dropping their African names for Christian names, the first step towards self-effacement. So again, this is the same tactic that we see used by these Asiatic Arabs and these European Christians in West and Central Africa. You know what I'm saying? You can see it in the Congo. You can see it all up and down through West Africa. They try to convert the king first in hopes of the king to convert the people. But usually these people, the common folk in these kingdoms and empires, they weren't going. They weren't going. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't happening like that. So they was converting the king in hopes that the king would convert the people, but the people weren't going. You know what I'm saying? And the kings only partially accepted these foreign religions. You know what I'm saying? Like especially dealing with Islam, they did not accept Sharia, which is Islamic law. They accepted a lot of the customs and the rituals because a lot of them lined up or came close to a lot of the stuff that they already knew. You know what I'm saying? But they did not wholly or fully accept Christianity or Islam. You can look over there today and say and see so-called black Christians and black Muslims going to the shrines at night. You know what I'm saying? Going to their local healers at night. You know what I'm saying? You can still see this today. So that tactic was something that was used all over Africa, but it was not something that worked in the way that they had hoped. So
Yeah, that was a good point there. I mean, because that goes to what some people may say they don't read and study. Say that Christianity, man, you got Christianity in Africa. You know, Christianity been in Africa. You know, you got Muslims or Muslims in Africa. You know, and they not understanding that not knowing, I would say, the tactic that took place in order to convert different people. They, like you said, the tactic they went after the kings, like you said, and you can see that in Ethiopia, as well as you can see that in Central Africa when you're dealing with the Congo. You seen the same thing. Where the king in the Congo was converted. The Portuguese converted him into Christianity, and his son became an evangelist. But with his son, or somewhat, I can't remember exactly how it went, but I know the king was converted, and then did he convert, or was that his son converted, and then he left it up to
the king converted, then the son converted. Now the king converted, and then he's like, "No, I can't do this." He gave it back, but his son
right. His son was the one, right? Because he sent his son off. His son got educated by the missionaries, and his son, ain't that right? Then his son came back. And then his son came back, right. So yeah. But you see that same tactic that they tried to do in Central Africa as well, man. Convert the king and then get the king to convert everybody else.
Yeah, it's the old take the head off the snake method.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, but I go to page 143, and I guess that's all I got. Like, I mean, I didn't really have a whole lot, especially because that's not my lane when it deals with Islam. Now, African traditions and Christianity. I could talk about that all day, but when it got, he started talking more about the Muslims in Africa, the Arabs with the Arabs in Africa, man. I that ain't really my forte. But I'll start with the Mamluks. I'll start on page 153. I had this. I don't know why I had it highlighted, underlined, but
right in line with me. Go ahead.
Okay. Where it says the Mamluks were white slaves. Were the whites who had been enslaved by the Arabs. And I think the Mamelukes, I think they, if I'm not mistaken, they might have came from out. I did remember reading something on them a while. Been some years ago.
Like Italian, ain't they?
They Russian or somewhere. I think they come from southern Russia, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody can look it up, but I think they come from out of southern Russia, somewhere around in there, that region in Russia. They were whites who had been enslaved by the Arabs, and in their wild and amazing swept out of their desert homeland to be conquered all the adjacent countries and establishments of the world empire with the speed that shook the world. There was an original bliss, the enslaved of the prisoners of war, which was the way general slavery began, was the order of the day. And you can see this same thing that took place, these prisoners of war. So you see the Arabs, they enslave white people too. So they don't enslave Africans. They enslave white people too. So they had slaves, which was prisoners of war. I don't know, we can read a little bit more, but I don't know in Pacific, because I know when you deal with Central Africa, I know the Africans, they went to war with their brethren or their kinsmen too. And they had a such thing as what we call prisoners of war as well. But their prisoners of war was certainly different than what the Arabs did, with the Africans, especially if you go and you study back in Central Africa. You look at Central Africa, you will see that the prisoners of war, they was able to roam free. They was able to roam free. They was able to work. They had a thing that they had to pay off, but after they paid off whatever the debt that they had to pay off being a prisoner of war, they was able to go home, or they was able to stay in the community. They was able to marry. They was able to marry within the country that they was able to marry with. So it wasn't no force, it wasn't no beating, it wasn't them, being poorly fed, and etc. But it says the enslaved prisoners of war, in which was the way general slavery began. It was the order of the day. Race had no bearing on the matter then. Whites, blacks, browns, or yellows, all were made slaves if captured. The Arabs also, so you can see right there that during this particular time that it was no such, it was no bearing in order to be a slave. It wasn't, it wasn't determined on the color of your skin, because you see right there when you talk about the Mamelukes, if I'm pronouncing the name right, the whites enslaved. The Arabs enslaved white folks. Not only white folks, they enslaved Arabs, they enslaved Asians. All were made slaves if captured. The Arabs also made a practice of creating strong slave armies. The white slave army was called the Mamelukes. These men stationed in Egypt revolted, overthrew the government, and established their own lines of ruling sultans. For this, they were hated by the Arabs and looked upon with scorn. Even though they had been converted to Islam, the white ex-slaves hated their former master even more. This white, am I going into, I stop right there. Is it going into what you wanted to talk about? Were you going to start it where it started with the white slaves revolting?
Yep.
But go ahead. And I'll elaborate behind you, because like now, some of this stuff, I read it the other day, and some of it was resonant, but now as I'm rereading it again, it's kind of clicking back. It's kind of with some stuff that I read in the past dealing with the Mameluke. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read this next chapter to touch on how the Mamelukes dealt with being enslaved. These is white slaves. And we ain't had this racial fabrication,
right,
that we do today here in Western America. You know what I'm saying? So Arabs seen themselves as white, just like Europeans see themselves as white. So we ain't gonna get into all that, but they, in modern terms, they white slaves. You know what I'm saying? So this is how they dealt with it. This white slave revolt and its historical significance are underplayed. Yet its impact was such that it influenced the course of modern history and black-white relations. The effect of that revolt on the black world was tragic, for the murderous onslaughts of the whites against their earnest masters so shocked the white world that the general enslavement of whites ended forever. So they revolted so bad, it was so crazy that they said, "Yo, we don't need to enslave them no more. Let's go over here and just kick it with the blacks because they seem to accept it." Therefore, Black Africa became the exclusive hunting ground for slaves, a situation made easy by the developments outlined in this work. He been talking about why these Arabs and Europeans feel like it's so easy to enslave us. This whole book has been a reoccurring theme of this book. All the theories of inherent black inferiority stem from the urgently felt need to justify the success in confining slavery to the African race. So yeah, man, I just wanted to read that and show how the Mamluks handled slavery, how they rebelled, and not saying that we didn't rebel, but they rebelled and they made it so crucial. They refused to be enslaved, and they took over their masters. They took over their master's command. You know what I'm saying? So they revolted. They laid everybody down, and they took over. You know what I'm saying? And it was so crucial and so brutal that the European world said, "Yo, we don't need to enslave these white folks no more. We don't need to enslave white people no more. Let's just stick
some problems, huh?
right. They don't want them problems." But yeah, that's all I had. We can go to the next slide.
Real quick for somebody to move on. And I could be wrong, like I'm saying. I remember it's been a while back here with the Mamelukes. I remember reading a book that was touching on them, their rebellion, and they broke free from up under the thumb of the Arab. And then I think I remember reading too, man. Then I could remember reading them saying the lowest thing to an African is their women. And then at one time they started giving their women to the Arabs to be enslaved. I could be wrong now, because it's been a while back here, but I remember it's been a while back. But I remember reading something about the Mameluke, after they got free, they had started giving their white women to the Arab, and was making a statement and some such, like I said, I can't remember because I'm paraphrasing.
They wanted to today.
Yeah, because I know it. Yeah, because the European don't give a damn about their wife. Not about women in general. Because it and it shows throughout history. Even when you go back to Christianity, it says that God is above man, and man is above woman. Then when you go to read more into Genesis, it tells you man fall because the sin of a woman. Then it talks about women, even right now, even if it's not even dealing with the biblical thing, we use the same outlook and perspective that they use. We say that the man is the head of the household. We say that this is a man's world. You go back and you look in the 50s and the 60s, you know what I'm saying, with the I forgot the woman's movement that took place in the maybe in the early 30s, 40s, somewhere, and then resurges back in the 60s or the 70s, somewhere around there. And the black women ended taking over. When it started with the white women first, because the European was, was always, down in their women, being aggressive to their women, being disrespectful to their women, saying woman places in the kitchen, depriving them from certain jobs. They had jobs as they either could be a nurse or a secretary. These was the only jobs that they could get. So Yeah, you
They
got,
go all the way back. They go all the way back into ancient times. They was doing it back then too. And the Arabs even pulled their card. They said, "Yo, these Europeans, they more jealous of each other than they is of their women." You know what I'm saying? Or something to the effect. He was basically saying they're not really concerned about the women. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they more concerned about the men. The men
Yep.
are more concerned with men than the women. Basically, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Calling them out on the low.
Yep. Because I think they were giving their women to the Arabs, man. Ain't nothing lower than the African is, but their own women. So yep, and they was passing them along to the Arabs. But yeah, that's. I mean, I ain't got nothing else, man, and that's on page 153. I know you read something in the bottom. I don't have nothing else. I'll be real with you. That's y'all forte when they get into that Arab stuff.
I'll say this on 153, on the end of 153, that next paragraph going into 154. It says the answer to this riddle of the centuries can be traced here. For the great change in human history when only blacks were enslaved led to the general degradation of the whole people. The way was excuse me. The way was now open and easy for all the relevant branches of science and scholarship to proclaim theories of the inherent inferiority of blacks. Now, I don't agree with this, and I respectfully disagree because you can see all the way back in Judaic folk culture or folklore, and even the Babylonian Talmud, you will see these people of the Levant region trying to associate blacks with slavery. You know what I'm saying? With the quote unquote curse of Ham. We know it was supposed to be the curse of Canaan. Noah's son, Canaan, sees his father naked in the nude and supposedly gets cursed. Well, not he's not supposed to get cursed. But they turn it into the son getting cursed, Ham. So it turns into the curse of Ham. If I'm saying that correct. Was it Ham that seen him naked? Or was it Canaan?
You say that again, man. My bad. I took my phone. You said was Ham the one that was cursed?
Yeah, it was supposed to be Ham that
it was Ham, but it was actually he wasn't a curse. It said his descendants will be cursed.
Right, and from that they turned it and switched it up and made Ham be cursed in this I think 6th century Babylonian Talmud, and from there that's where you get the curse of Ham, because it's really supposed to be the curse of Canaan, who is Ham's son. Right. But in the Babylonian Talmud, they switch it up and turn it and put the curse on Ham. So that's the beginning of associating blacks with slavery. But yeah, I just wanted to make that little correction.
Yeah. If you go to 150, the bottom of 159, right? And you look at the last paragraph, it says the antiquity of black civilizations, the amazing heights it's reached before record history, the earlier problems of Asian invasions, amalgamation of the new breed. We talked about that a few weeks ago. The new breed, remember that? Hold up. The amalgamation of the new breed, the colored Egyptians, the Caucasian penetration in the rural black lineages, the increasing pressures of blacks and their southward migrations, the Afro-Asian wars, the blackout of black history in Egypt, the long drawn-out process of Caucasianization of Egypt, as well as the de-Africanized, the withdrawal of Ethiopian border of the first cataract, the concentration of the blacks below the line, the confusion of the black history through confusion of names, color, and dynasties, integration and amalgamation as brotherhood myths, the great black migrations, the splitting up of states and languages, and their role in the decline of black African civilization All of these historical factors were set forth before the final collapse of the Ethiopian Empire in the 4th century AD, before we began the analysis of 3 children states that were born as the imperial mother passed, bequeathing to them her own deathless spirit to carry on. So in this overall, this gives you the blueprint of Arab and European success and dominance once they began to penetrate. And the further we go, the more we learn. But however, that whole paragraph right there was the outline. I mean, it basically summed up everything that we've been reading over the past few weeks regarding this book. Of course, there's still more, but as far as the earlier part of this book, that's a great summary and a great way to lead into the next chapter. When we look at ourselves, we don't really see ourselves as a conquered people, some of us, which is a good thing, because if we're confident enough to not see ourselves as a conquered people, then that means that we can rise up and we can take back or do whatever we need to do as our own. And then we do have a lot of defeateds who do see themselves as a conquered people and is too scared or afraid to do what must be done to build the relationships, build the businesses, support, represent, and rewrite, the tradition, the history and the traditions of a people, to put us back forward. But this also exposes why in the early 1900s there was this, gap of, in some instances, poor methodology when it came to overall fact finding for us. This is the reason why blacks were so conscious earlier. Our ancestors earlier on were so conscious of trying to rewrite history, because all the things that just happened, just took place, that we talked about in the previous 4 chapters. All of those things was completely not even mentioned to most people in any history books, so to say. What happened to Africa? That's the key point. And so that's why you had this continuous effort to correct history, so to say. But yeah, was mistakes made? Absolutely. But that's all I'm gonna say about that, man. I found this chapter to be, for me, I know y'all ain't wrapping up, but I found this chapter to be intriguing as the other chapters, even the ones we getting ready to get into. But because it basically just summed up our destruction at its finest for just in parts of the continent, because this blueprint will be used again. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, Sean. Yeah, that's some good points, man. Like I said, the chapter, it seemed like it was like a kind of like a summary chapter of the other 4. Based off some of the content there that we're reading, and I'm like, okay, this was from chapter such and such. This was from chapter such and such. So, yeah, man,
It's going down in chapter 8, though. I'll say that.
We gonna get there. About 3 more weeks for that. But yeah, I ain't had too much else. If y'all ain't got nothing else,
nah, that's about it. That's the last page.
Y'all don't really deal with the area and all.
Yeah, they number one more paragraph anyway. So I think that's it for everybody.
All right, man. So we're gonna go ahead and end this one early. And
I think it was a question too in the chat.
Oh, we got one.
Does the society bring a king to power, or is it given it taking it to represent? I might not understand.
Yeah, I don't know if he mean does the society bring a king to power, or is it given or taken to represent? I don't know.
This question poses me: who is a king? Is it divine right or cultural title? It's more of lineage. It's more lineage based, ain't it? Wouldn't it be, Kobe?
Yeah, it would be more of a limb. But you know, a king. I mean, when you talk about, am I? Oh, okay, I am muted. When you talk about a king, man, you know, there's so many aspects when you talk about a king. I mean, because the characteristic of a king can be an elder, but a king ain't nothing but a title. But yeah, you can say it's more of a lineage thing, especially when we looking at from Kemet. You know, it was passed from down from one generation to the, you know, from one generation to the next. When you're dealing with Kemet, and then I'm trying to understand what he was trying to say with the other question he was saying.
Yeah, and I'll say I think it's a cultural title, but it becomes a divine right by way of the culture, because a lot of the cultures around the world are synonymous when it comes to the king, and the king being divine, and the king being a mediator between the people and the god that they worship or whatever. It could be sun god. I'll just use that for example.
Right.
You know, he's always the mediator. He's always the son of the sun. He's the son of Ra. He's the son of whatever the sun deity is. The king is the son of that. So,
right. You see that depicted all throughout the glyphs, and we talk about that when we was in, I think, the last chapter. I get confused. I don't know if it was in that chapter or the chapter before. Well, we talk about how they became, you know, had this divine rule or became divine. It was the priest. It was the priest doing it, if I'm not mistaken. Ain't that right, Brother Sutek? Or
say it again. The priest is what?
The priests are the ones that made that, you know, when the priest was trying to come into power doing the Akhenaten reign, and then they wanted to position, you know, the priestess was going against Akhenaten. And then they wanted to put themselves in a position of power. So they started to create certain things and push certain narratives. And I think they made they started making the kings divine, where they started becoming the intermediary between them and the divine, or them and the excuse me, and the creator.
Yeah, that was the whole spiel with that Atenism that Akhenaten was supposedly bringing on.
Yeah, I think that was in chapter 3 that we talked about that. We kind of went deep into that, and I think that was chapter 3. Is that chapter 3? Is it Setepet Ra? I keep going back to chapter 3 is my favorite chapter right now. So
yeah, that was powerful.
My notes all over the place, so I definitely wouldn't.
Yeah, I keep talking about chapter 3, man. But all of them been pretty good. I ain't gonna lie. This been like, to me, kind of like my boringest chapter I done read so far. Like, we'll reread it, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm not really into the Arab, you know, and the Arab invasions. I know some stuff about Arabs and some of the things that they did, but you know, like I said, that wasn't my forte. So it kind of got boring. So I kind of stuck to the first couple of pages that deal with Christianity, and you know, how they came into Christianity, and you know, how they began to, you know, Chancellor Williams stated that they began to lose their memories over so many years, and it was, you know, through the Ptolemies era when they began to pass these laws and shut down the temples and shut down them from practicing their traditions, and then excluded them from, you know, created their own and excluded them because they wouldn't let them be a part of their priesthood. So, you know, I you know, like I said, we can talk about African traditions and customs all day, and ethnic groups and Christianity, but when we start dealing with Arabs, and you know, that's just not my forte. So the more I read, it started to become boring to me. I mean, I know that's Sutek and Sean's lane. I mean, Sutek and Sean's lane.
So obviously, it's slowly turning up.
Go ahead, Kobe. I see you getting ready. Go ahead, line it on up, knock that thing down so we can end, because I know we got about 20 more minutes of promo. Come on.
Nah, we ain't got. I'm just gonna make it real quick, man, for people can just go ahead and get it, man. We just got to keep pushing in their face, man. But For those that may not know, we dropped another publication. I know y'all tired of it too, but it's okay. It's all right. You know, God, I know they'd be like, damn, again, they just dropped the publication. Damn, again, they just dropped the publication. And that's, you know, that's what we're doing. We transitioning into a writing team, a writing research team, not just on here, you know, on YouTube land all the time. So, you know, this is our spiritual combat. Again, we playing off the word spiritual combat. Historical Survey of the Minds of African Warrior Scholars, Volume 3, presented by the Masi Warrior Clan, written by Kofi Paisai Research Team. It is available now on www.kofipaisaitv.com. All you have to do is go to our website, go to the Learning Center, go to Learning Market, click the Learning Market. Once you click the Learning Market, all of our books will come up. Stroll all the way down to the bottom because we have tons of books on there now. We have 7 publications out. So go to the last publications. You will see Spiritual Combat and place your order. Again, I just want to keep reiterating this. The book right now, until after Kwanzaa, is on sale. It's $24.99 on Kofi Paisai TV. But if you go to Amazon.com and get it on Amazon.com, it's $28.99. So save yourself $6 to $8 or maybe $10. But we're talking about $5. You saving $5 when you go on the website. And you know, plus taxes. You go on Amazon, you're gonna be hit $28.99, which is $29, plus sale tax, which is $3.50, plus the shipping and handling, which may be between $7 to $9. So that's almost an extra $10-some when you could just pay that $5. I mean, get it for $5 cheaper, and then the list whatever the shipping is, which is, you know, is nothing real heavy. And go ahead and get the book, man. So again, go to the Learning Market, stroll all the way down. And if you don't have any of the other texts we got out, you know, cop those as well. Also, we just released Mboka Family Connected Apparel. It's our online store. It is a clothing line. It's not a t-shirt store. It is a clothing line. If you can type in www.dopetees.online, or you can just go to Google if you want and just type in Mboka, M-B-O-K-A, which Mboka means family. Y'all should know that by now. We say it a lot in the chat. Dolph Thing just means which I explained if you watched the show on Friday when we released. Dolph Thing is a mixture of English and Greek, and Dolph Thing means crazy or creative, or crazy and creative, beautiful or unique. So we can actually call each other Dolph Things because we are unique people. We are a beautiful people. So I just broke down the whole logo. If you want to understand the whole logo, go to that show I did on Friday when we did the release. But if you go to the website, you will see we have varieties of stuff on there. We got t-shirts, we got long sleeve shirts, we got hoodies, we got fitted caps, we got snapback caps, we got bucket caps, we got skull caps, we got purses, we got book bags, we got fanny packs, we got bomber jackets, we got
make y'all make Kofi get some rolling trays too for y'all, bro.
Yeah. You know, we got windbreaker jackets, we got socks, we got pants is on there. Sweatpants is on there with the different logos on there. So we got the Mboka brand on there. We got Kofi Paisai Research brand on there. We got Masi Warrior Clan brand on there. And then we're going to vert you out into the Dolph Thing. We're going to get y'all familiar with Dolph Thing. So we got some new stuff that will be uploaded up on there tonight. And I'll be going live just probably about 5 minutes tonight and talk about it. Some of the new items that we got uploaded. I think we got about 4 new items that we're going up. That Dolph Thing is definitely one of the things. I have some stuff next week. Every week I have some stuff coming in where you can actually look at how it look when you put it on. I took a picture of 3 shirts: the Masi Warrior Clan shirt, the Kofi Paisai shirt, and the Mboka shirt. Last week I have some new stuff in. This week I have about 4 or 5 different other varieties of shirts. I even have the new Dolph Thing shirt that's going up tonight. I have that up there. I have a new shirt in Mboka. I'm not gonna say exactly what it is, but it's another design with Mboka on it, but it's something dope. It'll be going up tonight. So we got a few other things going up tonight. So it's a clothing line. So please go and support. Appreciate the people that already done went on and purchased your stuff online. I done went and verified to see who all purchased stuff already. So appreciate for those that purchased the stuff. Printfield will be emailing y'all when y'all get ready to ship y'all. If you provided your email, you can get your tracking number. All of y'all stuff is ready. I already went back on. All of y'all stuff was waiting to be fulfilled. Now the orders is being fulfilled as I looked earlier to see with the update. So they being fulfilled. So you'll probably be receiving your product probably by the end of this week, probably Friday or Saturday. Take 2 to 7 business days to get your product. So definitely go in and get your stuff, and we'll continue to post stuff so y'all can see it and continue to post pictures of the new stuff that come in that I get, and hopefully stuff Sean get, he'll be able to show it, and Being it and some of the other people that bought some stuff be able to show their shirts and their skull caps and hoodies and stuff like that too. Well, that's all I got, man. Please go out and support. So go out and get your Spiritual Combat Volume 3 and go to Mboka Family Connected Apparel online store that we have and purchase some of that product off of there as well. That's it, man.
All right. We will see y'all next Sunday, and we will be doing Chapter 6, The African Constitution, The Birth of Democracy. So we will see y'all next week, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. Birth of Democracy. Peace.
Peace.